Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ignorant Intellectual on Media. Today, I thought we'd do another mixed haul. Uh, I need some stuff off my desk. I got some pretty good stuff for you, some new, some used. It's all books and movies, so um, it should be at a reasonable time, but maybe not. I like to blather on, right? So, all right, so let's just get to it. Let's do the books first, okay? So, first up is Huxley's Brave New World. I consider this one of the greatest novels of all time. This one is put out by the Perennial Classics. All right. It's Huxley's greatest work. It's basically about a future world where, well, when Huxley wrote it, what was it in the 1930s? I could be wrong with that, but anyways, at the time there was this huge popularity of eugenics. I'm not sure if you know what eugenics is. I think most people do, which is basically breeding human beings to create a super race, right? The Nazis were big into it during World War II. The Aryan race is the top race of the world, and they ended up creating baby factories because this kind of takes that and puts it on steroids in a way. Basically, you have a society or a city that's run by these types of ideas where people only have sex for fun. They don't have sex for procreation. Uh, the creation of human beings are done in a lab, in a factory, and you are specifically bred for like three or four different levels of society as the society needs. So if they need more, physical laborers, they'll make some physical laborers. They're not exceptionally smart. They're usually pretty gifted physically, that kind of thing, right? But if they need some more professors or teachers or whatever, then they'll make that kind, right? So there's like a bunch of different levels, and they're all like Greek letters, like the epsilons and so on and so forth, right? So it's an extremely good book, and dystopian fiction. That's what this is called. It's science fiction, but it's like a subgenre of science fiction called dystopian fiction, and that is my favorite type of novel. This one is up there. Along with like The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. She also had the Mad Adam trilogy, which is another one that's really good. Then there's 1984 by George Orwell. There's We by the Russian author that his name is hard to pronounce, so I won't even try. I'll just put it here. And Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, and a more recent one, which was I really enjoyed watching was reading was Jennifer Government. If you haven't read that book, I would highly recommend it. Um, Anyways, dystopian fiction is such a great genre of fiction. That's my favorite fiction, so um, you should pick it up as well. All right. So next book is uh, Che Guevara's Guerrilla Warfare. Basically, this is his thoughts, processes, and historical account of the Cuban Revolution, where they took over and made Cuba a communist country and got rid of the what was it, Spanish? I think it was Spanish, right? Um, so Che Guevara is like this really big cult figure. You see people are running around with his face on their T-shirts. He went and fought, to free Cuba in order to make it communist. And he went to Bolivia and got shot by the Bolivian army. So ended up dying in Bolivia, right? So all right. Next up is two books by Frederick Engels or Karl Marx. But this one is The Condition of the Working Class in England. It's part of the Oxford World Classics. This is the newest editions of the World's Classics are similar to this, but this one is the previous book covers with the line that goes across here, right? And the Communist Manifesto put out by Arcturus. Arcturus has, the cheap paperback. Well, they're not paperbacks, more like soft cover, trade paperback size. And they also come out with hardcovers as well. And they came out with a hardcover version of the Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx and Frederick Engels. All right, so here's two Marx and Engels books. Um, The condition of the working class in England is basically Engels' reporting of, the conditions of the working class back in the 1840s and 1850s in England. And, you know, it's one of the base works that him and Marx, based with Marx's, ideology on communism or socialism and, the proletariat and the bourgeoisie and the means of production and those that work under them, and how there's going to be a big, huge revolution. And basically, they put forward their ideas in simple form in this manifesto, Communist Manifesto, to change the world into a communist world. All right. So, and basically, Russia took it to heart, and so did China. And so in 1917, Russia had a revolution and kicked out the Tsar and everybody else, killed them all, and made Russia a communist state. And then Mao did the same thing in 1947 for China, right? So it's all based on this book. Das Kapital would be another one maybe you would read. But my personal favorite out of all the books that I've read by Marx and Engels is Engels' book, The Origin of the Family and Private Property. And there's a third word in there that I always forget if I'm not looking at the book itself. But anyways, it's The Origin of the Family, something, and Private Property, right? So where he goes in it. I don't know if you know anything about Marxism. It's a failed ideology. It failed when Russia fell in 1989 and the Berlin Wall came down. Um, and it, cost people millions of lives. Everybody ended up going into the gulag. You want to read about that? Read Solzhenitsyn's, 2-volume work, The Gulag Archipelago, if you want to read about that and how Russia is. And anyway, um, if you want to, the thing that I could never understand about communism or the economic side of communism, which, Marx is like, a pseudo economist, right? The social economist, but he says, anyway, so was how they thought that the bourgeoisie, or let's say a business owner, all right, who has a business and starts a business and builds the business and hires employees, if that business makes a profit, then that profit amount is taken off the backs of the employees. In other words, let's say the employees are all making $10 an hour, and at the end of the year, the business, let's say they have 10 employees, the business makes $100,000 after they pay all their employees $10 an hour, they pay all their expenses, and so on and so forth, and the final profit, let's say, is $100,000. Right? That means that the owner of the business basically took advantage of his employees at $10,000 a pop, right? In other words, he paid them $10 an hour, which would be 20 grand in a year if you work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for 50 weeks, and then have 2 weeks off. It's 2,000 hours, so $10 an hour would be 20,000. All right, so he paid his workers, his 10 workers, $20 an hour, which ends up 20,000 a year, which ends up being 200,000. He did whatever business he needed to do to get the products that he need, or the supplies or whatever. All right, all those expenses. All right, let's say it cost whatever it cost. Then at the end, he had $100,000 more at the end of the year than he did when it first started. What Marx and Engels argue is that basically that owner of the business took advantage of his workers to the tune of about $10,000 per worker, which makes 100,000. So Engels and Marx say that the working class, these people that are actually doing the labor, will wake up, figure out that they're a class, and realize that the business owners that are taking advantage of them, getting free labor, right, when they are getting paid 20,000 instead of getting paid 30,000 in this example, um, uh, will wake up and overthrow the bourgeoisie and take over and socialize all of the factories and everything else, right? So basically, which is what a co-op is basically. And there are co-ops in North America. You just look around. There's many of them. They're not hugely successful, but there's nothing stopping anybody from starting a co-op if they want to create a business that way, where all the owners are also all the workers. It's basically what a co-op is, right? So, um, but if you create a business and you hire employees and your business earns money, you're taking advantage of the labor of the workers that work for you, right? And that money should be going to them because it's their labor that is creating this wealth. All right. So, um, what I can never figure out with that ideology is, um, the owner of the business pays the salary of his employees at, let's say in this example, $20,000 each. All right. That's pure profit for the employees. All right. They may have expenses, maybe they have to buy clothes to go to work, they have food they have to buy, they have rent they have to pay, or a mortgage they have to pay, so on and so forth. Those are their expenses. And if that amount that they're getting paid is less than the amount they have to pay on food, shelter, and clothing, right? Transportation, all that kind of stuff, and they have money at the end of it, and then they put it in a bank to save it. Well, that's their profit, right? You understand? That's the employee's profit. If whatever they make and whatever they end up having to spend to live is the same, then they're basically running on a you know on a non-profit business or whatever, right? So basically, the profit of the business, I'm going back to the employer now, is the salary of the actual owner of the business. So he's paying his employees 20,000 each, and he earned $100,000 at the end of the year because it's his business, right? So, but Marx and Engels says that $100,000 is not the owner's. The owner is taking advantage of his workers and paying them less than what their labor is worth, right? Okay, so um, there's an argument there, but what I'm saying is that $100,000 of profit isn't like something that is stolen from the workers, in my opinion. It's something that the owner of the business earned from his business, right? Okay, so you can say he's taking advantage of his employees, but the $20,000 that each employee makes, that's their profit, right? That's their earnings. Like $100,000 is for the owner of the business. Now, let's say the business ends up going to the end of the year and there is no, let's say that it breaks even, then what does the owner live off of, right? He doesn't live off of anything, right? If the business ends up losing money, then the owner will end up declaring bankruptcy or going out of business or starving or whatever, right? Okay, so so he's the one that's taking the chance, right? Now, I mean, we're in an age of huge corporations now, which Engels and Marx didn't have back in their day, right? I mean, these corporations are public owned corporations. You can buy shares in them and own a piece of the company, right? So it's actually a social, corporations are a social thing, right? Most are, right? I mean, there's probably 100,000 people that own, different corporations. Now you have a CEO that runs it, a CFO that finances it, but those are all employees as well. The owners of the business are the ones that own all the shares, right? So it's like a publicly owned business, right? So I mean, there are some non-publicly owned business. So like Tesla, everybody thinks that or Microsoft, everybody thinks, um, I have such a hard time remembering it. Elon Musk owns Tesla. He doesn't own Tesla. It's a publicly um, owned corporation. You have a board of directors. You have shareholders. Those are the people that own Tesla, right? Elon Musk is an employee of Tesla and gets paid $50 billion. You know what I mean? So it's kind of, it's a bit naive thinking that Elon Musk doesn't really own Tesla, but you understand what I mean? It's a publicly owned company. You can buy Tesla stock and become an owner of Tesla too if you want, right? Um, but what I'm saying is any profit that a business makes, that's the salary of the person that owns the business. You understand? It's not like that money, is like quote unquote taken off the backs of the workers, right? Um, you could look at it in that way a bit, but if you gave all the money of the profit of the business to the workers, then what is the owner of the business doing? You understand? Where is his money? Does he pay himself a salary? Well, yeah, he should pay himself a salary, especially if it's a corporation. He does pay himself a salary, right? So, but anyways, the point being is when an employee gets paid, that's their profit coming out of the business, right? When the owner gets paid, that's the profit coming out of the business as well. You understand? He owns it. He's the one that took the chance of starting the business. He's the one that put his own capital into the business to start it. He's the one that fails if the business fails. Now, of course, all the employees end up becoming unemployed, right? But um, the business owner, loses his business as well, right? So, and if it doesn't make a profit, it takes a loss, then the owner can cover that business with his own money, right? And then, you don't get a loss if you're an employee, right? You end up getting paid. Now, if the owner doesn't pay you, yeah, you end up getting a loss. But do you understand what I mean? There is no risk when you work. You get paid for your labor. You have no stake in the business, right? So it's not like you're going to lose money if the business loses money, right? You may become unemployed, but you're not going to lose money, right? So, all right. So that's the thing I don't understand. What of all the stuff that I've read with Marx and Engels, they don't bring that up, saying that the reason why a business has a profit, that profit is actually not profit off the backs of the employees. It's, the salary of the actual employer. That's where he makes his money, right? You understand? And he deserves to make money. It's his business, right? He's working like everybody else. And people who say that, business owners actually don't do any work, who's taking care of their business? If they hire a manager, sure, but if you have money and you have a business, you need to take care of that business. If you don't, then somebody else will, and you'll get screwed out of that money, right? So, it happens so often when uh, if you don't watch your business and watch your money, people will end up taking that money away from you because you're not paying attention, right? So, all right. Um, so he works, at most of the time he works at enlarging his the money that he's making, right? Okay. Just like an employee wants to enlarge, so they join unions, get higher rate wages. They will negotiate with the owner of the business to get a higher rate. They get raises, you know, every 6 months they'll get a raise, or a year they get a raise, that kind of thing. So, um, anyways, do employees make as much as the owner if the business is successful? No. Do you think that maybe the owner is taking advantage of his workers because if he's making huge amounts of money and his workers aren't, and it's the workers that are doing, a majority of the labor, um, they should benefit from it? There's an argument there. But another thing is that, and you saw it in Russia, um, employees don't create wealth. They create it by working, but they don't create it by thinking of something and then starting a business, right? That's an entrepreneurial, if you can say that by ignorant intellectual, um, aspect, right? So if you if you go to work for somebody, you're not contributing to the ideas of that. Do you understand? Do you understand what I mean? You're working with whatever skill that you have, whether you're a carpenter, whether you're a cashier, whether you're a lawyer or whatever, right? So um, the creation of wealth comes from ideas, the ability to think up something, some service, some product, something that people will want, and then going about making it and getting to the people that want it, right? That's what creates wealth. You working at a business does not create wealth in the beginning of the wealth. What it does, it sustains wealth, right? But it doesn't create wealth, right? The ideas is what creates wealth, and that's why, in a capitalist society, the idea man is the one, that we reward highly for if it ends up being successful, right? So even though labor sustains wealth, it doesn't create wealth. You understand what I mean? The wealth has to be there in the first place, and that's from an idea person. That's from a guy who thinks up an invention, thinks up something, and then, you know, produces it or whatever, right? You understand? And then from that idea spawns the labor, and then the labor, helps with the wealth, but the actual spark and initial creation that's going to happen comes from the idea. It doesn't come from a person working at the business, right? Um, so you look at Russia, where everybody is, working for basically the Communist Party, right? Working for the government. Nobody owns anything, right? Um, there's no incentive to create, right? You may get spawns here and there of creation just because out of necessity or whatever, but um, the actual idea of creating something that a person thinks will sell well and he'll make a ton of money at doing is a very big incentive on creating wealth, right? And that's why Western countries with capitalist societies create so much wealth, and communist countries do not. They all end up poor. All right, I've never seen a communist country that isn't poor, right? Have you? Um, and you can now say China is no longer poor, but they were poor since Mao took over, right? The reason why they're not poor anymore is because they're unique in the history of the world, in that they have a communist government, right? Society, but they have a capitalist economy. Those two have never been together ever. All right. You've had democratic societies with capitalist economies, and you've had communist societies with socialist um, economies, but you've never had a communist society with a capitalist economy, and you do now with China, right? It's the first time in history that I can think of. All right, you do have mixed economies in democratic countries where you mix social ideas as well as capital ideas, and those are the best ones because you know socialist type of ideas blunt the sharp ups and downs of capitalism, right? So like unemployment insurance, social welfare, Medicare, that kind of things. These you know dull the knife of capitalism, of the ups and downs of capitalism. You end up going into a really high productive time, then damn, you go into a recession, then a depression, then you go up and down. Do you understand what I mean? But if you implement social programs, which takes money from those that are the wealthiest and give it to people that aren't, um, you even it out a bit, and society moves forward at a better pace. Okay, so all right, so enough about the Communist Manifesto and its failure as an economic plan, right? What's up next? Okay, so next up is I found actually two copies of Animal Farm by George Orwell. Other than 1984, this is probably Orwell's greatest book. It's a novella, basically about a farm. Well, it has to do with basically it's, what is it? It's like Orwell's idea on the communist revolution in Russia, back in 1917. It's basically about a farm where the animals take over and kick out Farmer Jones from his own farm and take over and run it themselves. And the pigs kind of manage it, and all the other animals in the farm are are workers, are laborers, so on and so forth. And then you get to see how Orwell thinks, what he thinks of communism, right? Through an allegory, it's called, if I remember correctly, an allegory of communism as Animal Farm. It's a great read, and it's a short read. It's not all that long. Less than 200 pages, 96 pages in this one. Is it 96 pages in this one too? This one has 95 pages. So, all right, quite an interesting read. You should read both 1984 and Animal Farm, and his essays, and anything else that Orwell writes. It's all really good. All right. Next up is The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank. Basically, this is about a girl and her family and another family that are hiding in the back of is it a house? Is it a business? I can't remember. They call it the annex in Amsterdam during the Nazi occupation. basically she writes about her life being confined to the back of this place with the two families hiding out from the Nazis because they're Jewish, right? So, um, and it is quite a depressing read. It's sad and joyful at the same time, but once you get to the end of it and you realize the story isn't over, but it just stops abruptly, and you know that Anne Frank and her family have been discovered uh, by the Nazis and they're all off to the concentration extermination camps, it really, really depresses you reading that book. All right. What else do we have here? Did that, did that, did that, did that, did that, did that. All right, we got Siddhartha by Herman Hesse. I read this about 20 years ago and it blew my mind. So if you want your mind blown, read this book. It, it kind of instills like Eastern philosophy into this guy's life who's searching for meaning in his life. Anyways, it's an extremely, extremely good book if you have not read it. Top 10 books of all time. The Little Prince, one of the greatest children's books that, well, I don't know if you could, it, it is a children's book, but it could be an adult book as well. It's basically about this little guy who lives on this little planet who has a flower, and there's three volcanoes on the planet. And then he decides to leave it and go out and discover the world. He travels around. He ends up on Earth. He ends up getting into a conversation with this pilot who's in a desert where when his plane runs out of gasoline or something, it's not working. He's trying to fix his plane, and the little boy ends up coming to have a conversation. Then they end up have a whole philosophical conversation about what life means, and it will blow your mind. All right, same with. All right, next up after that is Notre Dame de Paris, which is Victor Hugo's masterwork. It's basically the Hunchback of Notre Dame. All right, in English translation, but this is the French, original French text. All right, and I've never read the book, but everybody's seen the movie by Disney, right? All right, and here's one that's going to be in my collection. I picked up, and that's the Iliad of Homer. I did not have this one in the Modern Library. This is the original Modern Library. It started back in what 1917, around World War One, in competition to the British editions of the Everyman Library. And was it Dent and Sons that does this? No, it's Random House, right? Yeah, Random House. All right. So actually, the Modern Library came before Random House. If you look at its history, the Modern Library was a book company, and then it had an offshoot of books that aren't in this library that were just publishing regular books, and they named that division Random House, and then that one blew up, and this one didn't as much. And so Random House kind of took over the name, and then this became a subsidiary of Random House, even though it was a reverse when it first started, right? This is basically um, the modern library is basically the competition of the Everyman Library, which came out, in 1907, 1906, sometime around there, and these British guys wanted to put out a library that was reasonably priced for your average everyman uh, could read, and they put out 1,000 volumes of it. Well, the Americans looked at that because they imported these books from England into Canada and the United States. And the Americans looked at it and said, "Hey, this is way too English centric, right? It's way too Great Britain centric. There's not enough American authors in this." So they decided to a couple of guys decided to create the modern library and put out, a similar idea, a cheap book, hardcover book that can be read and carried around with people. It's not expensive, so everybody can buy it, but it has more, American representation in the library. It ended up being just under 900 volumes altogether, um, and a lot of great stuff, as you can see. The Iliad by Homer. This is basically Homer's huge epic poem about the Trojan War, with Helen of Troy and the fight between the two, and it's one of the earliest pieces, if not the earliest pieces in Western literature. All right, so I can now add that. That's number 166 in the collection. All right, and what's up next? Okay, we have the International Collectors Library. I do not collect this library, but it is a huge amount of volumes in this International Collectors Library. The thing about it is that they make the books. They look at them. It's really cheaply made. These, right? They're like the cheap version of the Franklin Library or the Easton Press. Those really nice leather bound editions. Well, this is kind of like going to the lowest, make it look like a leather bound edition, but there's no leather involved in it at all. It's basically cardboard and faux leather. Um, and they're really, really hard because of it, how cheaply they're made. They're really, really hard to keep in really good condition. You'll notice these all over the place. They're popular. People bought them a lot, but they get damaged so easy because they're so cheaply made. But people collect them. All right. So I found this one, and they're very easy to resell, and that's why I got it. I found it for like $4, and I'll be able to sell it for maybe $10 or $15, right? Because there are people that collect the library even still. And this one is in really good shape, actually. It's not too bad at all. Just a little bit of dings here or there, but um, there is a bit of discoloring on the front from being in the sun. But overall, it's in really good condition. Basically, this one is The Nun Story, Catherine Hume. All right. And this is basically a fiction book, if I remember correctly, about a nun who is also a nurse. And it's the fight in her between God and helping people who are sick. You know, she has like a pulling between the two, right? And she's got to decide which one she wants to be. So, all right. And the last book, I found this for $4 as well, and that's the More Than Complete Hitchhiker's Guide by Douglas Adams, which basically has the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the Restaurant at the End of the Universe, Life, the Universe, and Everything. So long, and thanks for the fish. And young Zaphod plays it safe. It's basically all the Hitchhiker's Guide books about the Earthling that was on the Earth when um, it was destroyed, and he got off the Earth just in time on a intergalactic spaceship, and he ends up meeting Zaphod Beeblebrox, and there's this guide, a hitchhiker's guide to the galaxy, and he goes around to the galaxy visiting all these states on this tourist guide that this tourist book called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I haven't read it in years, but it's one of the funniest science fiction books that you can read, and all of Douglas Adams stuff, even Dirk Gently's um, Detective Agency, those books as well. They're all extremely funny if you really enjoy it. Stephen Leacock in Canada is super funny, and so is Douglas Adams, um, and has a space a space theme to his humor, right? So, all right, so those are the books. Now let's do the movies. All right, so let's do the movies that I've watched over the last little while. Um, just like I was watching Ray Donovan. I seem to be wanting to watch TV shows lately, right? So I was watching Ray Donovan. I watched all of that. You'll know that if you watch my previous videos. And I've picked up House MD, and I've been watching House MD. so um, so that's what I've been watching mostly. That and the history of jazz, the Ken Burns documentary. It's like 10 volume set that you can get. I found that on DVD. I've been watching that as well. So I haven't been watching a lot of movies lately, but ones that I have watched are all right. So um, I wanted to get this up because I'm bad with names. So just give me 1 second here. All right. So first up is I watched Dog Soldiers, and this is a British film by Neil Marshall. All right. He's the guy that did The Descent, as it says on this, and he did a few other films. I can't remember the other ones right now, but um, this one wasn't bad for a. It was his first film, and I think it's pretty low budget. But the English actors that were in this, or some of them might be Australian, I'm not sure. But anyways, there's three main actors in this film that everybody knows now, right? One of them is Liam Cunningham, all right, and he got his big name in North America when he played what's his name, Davos in the Game of Thrones, all right, and then you have what's his name, Owen Owen off of Grey's Anatomy. He's in this as well. Um, what's his name? Kevin. I guess I had to put it up. Okay, Kevin McKidd. All right. So he played Owen Wilson. Owen. What was his name? Owen Hunt. Dr. Owen Hunt on Grey's Anatomy, and he's one of the main guys in this film as well. Basically, this film is about werewolves. All right. So the greatest werewolf film of all time probably is American Werewolf in London. That would be my argument. Dog Soldiers isn't bad. You know the special effects are pretty dated now, but overall it's not that bad of a film. I did watch it to the end, even though it was a low budget kind of film, and you could tell it was interesting enough to keep me watching. So not too bad of a movie at all if you like horror films or whatever, right? And then I found this and I picked this up just on a whim. And it's Dracula Sucks, all right? And this is basically a softcore porn movie that has very little plot, but at least it has a plot. Most porn films do not have plots. This one has a plot, and it's basically Dracula comes back to life, all right? Um, and it's not like most films of an adult nature where you have like a 5 minute acting, then 20 minutes of sex or whatever, and then another 2 minutes, and then another 20 minutes of that kind of thing. This thing is more of a an art house porn film where you actually do have a storyline, and the actual sex parts are smaller than the actual film parts, right? So, but I picked it up because it's a Vinegar Syndrome's it's a Vinegar Syndrome title in their, what was it called, Peakorama, in their Peakorama section, and their number, right? This is Peakorama number 10 or number 19. It's hard to see. Number 10, right? So they're all like softcore porn titles, right? And I picked this one up because it was a 4K, and I decided to watch it, but it didn't need to have a 4K. This even with the 4K, the film stock was okay, but anyways, I'll probably end up getting rid of it. Uh, was a curiosity though. All right, next up for that is a Flight of the Phoenix. All right, this is a Masters of Cinema title, so this is a Blu-ray, and it's number 149 in the collection, and it's basically a 1970s. Was it 1970? 1965. Basically, it's about an airplane full of guys um, that ends up crashing in the desert, and then they try to survive living in the desert. And there's a German guy who's an engineer, and he says that they can, retrofit this airplane to fly again, right? So the whole film is them trying to finish the plane before they all starve to death or become so dehydrated they can't do anything, they die, right? Anyways, it's like a survival film, and it's not bad. Who directed this? Robert Aldridge directed it. All right, so not too bad of a film. And I got another Eureka title, and this is For All Mankind. And this I quite enjoyed. This is a documentary of all the Apollo missions that went to the moon. They basically show you an atypical trip from Houston, all right, up to the moon and then back again. But they don't just do one mission, they do like pretty much all of the Apollo missions, and they kind of blend in all the different film to create like one trip to the moon and back. But sometimes it's a different astronaut there, and sometimes you get to see Neil Armstrong take a step on the moon. But also you got Apollo 16. A lot of the footage was from the Apollo 16 mission, right? Anyways, it's kind of cool to see the whole thing. It's really kind of mind blowing, and they cleaned it up really well, and the photography or the film, looking back at the Earth or looking on the surface of the moon and all that, you kind of you kind of get a feel of what astronaut life is like. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, some of the things that I picked up is, the flag, when they planted the flag, because there's no atmosphere and there's no wind, the flag kind of just sits there. It's like in suspended animation almost, right? So it's kind of weird. to look at the flag not blowing, right? And they don't walk on the moon. They kind of hop and skip and jump on the moon, right? When they're moving, they don't walk. It's too slow, so they kind of hop and skip like they're kids, right? Which is kind of cute as well, right? So, and then all the shots of the moon and the Earth and everything in between was like, wow, that's some good photography, right? So, anyways, overall, this is quite an enjoyable watch. Now, this is also in the Criterion collection. All right, so um, these guys put this one out in 19. No, this is 1989 was the film, but when did they put out this? 2011. They put this out in 2011. So I'm not sure when the Criterion version of this came out, but you have this in the Eureka and in Criterion. Now this is a region B, right? Region B, so it's played on Blu-rays in Europe and England and Great Britain, right? Um, so and the Criterion is region A, so it's played in North America. So that might be the reason why. Maybe they got the rights to it, but only in Europe, and then Criterion got the rights to it for the North American audience. That might make sense because the Criterion is also a Blu-ray as well. I don't know if a 4K has come out with this yet, but the Blu-ray that I have in the Criterion collection, and the Blu-ray I have in Eureka, they're basically very similar. So you kind of got to choose which one you want. Now that leads to a question when it comes to curating your collection, right? Is if you collect the Criterion collection and you collect Eureka's Masters of Cinema and you have a title that's in both, do you collect both of them? Or are you of the thing saying you don't want, you know, you have limited amount of space and you don't want to double up on titles, right? So you just want to have one title. So do you look at the Criterion, see how good that one is with its, with the film itself, the disc, and the extras and everything else, and then you look at the Eureka version of it and see, and then you decide which one, and then you put it in? Or are you a person say, well, I'm collecting the Criterion collection. I want all the Criterion. That's the whole point of collecting the collection, and I'm collecting the Masters of Cinema as well. The whole point of that is collecting the whole collection, right? So then you kind of have to have both, right? You kind of have to have a double copy of the film, right? So um, what can you do? It's a bit of a dilemma, I guess, right? So, and then if a 4K comes out of this, but it's not in one of those, it's in let's say Indicator gets the 4K version of it, or right, and Indicator is another one that you collect because they're also numbered, right? And they get a 4K of it, you collect it. Well, you kind of have to. Now you have three of the same movie in your collection just because you collect these different movie libraries, right? So it's a bit of a quagmire. I'm actually going through the process. I think I'll do it on film with you guys of 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 curating my collection, of reducing it because it's getting to the point where um, I'm running out of space. I still have a bit of space in different parts of the library, but in order for me to move to that space, I kind of have to move di- hundreds of films over, and then move them up to the next one, and then move them over and up just to get one film in. So if I have to put this film here, but it's all tight and blocked because of all the films, but there's one way over here, and then I got to move all these things around in order to fit this one in. It's kind of getting irritating. So I thought maybe I'd curate my collection a bit, get rid of some titles that I don't need or whatever, and open up different spaces in different parts of my library. I think the biggest way I'm going to be able to do it is um, if I have a copy of the Blu-ray, then I don't need a copy of the DVD, so I'm going to get rid of the DVD. That'll leave a space, that kind of thing. So, um, but anyways, I thought maybe I'd film that, and I haven't decided exactly if I'm going to do it or not, but on film. But I think I will. It'll be interesting. You'll see how, let's say, one movie collector curates their collection, right? So that's For All Mankind. All right, basically about the moon landings of all the different Apollo missions. And then now let's do a CD. I picked this. I picked this CD up. Okay, and this is Billie Eilish's "Happier Than Ever," and I'm a very, very big Billie Eilish fan. In fact, I just picked up her first album. Um, when we sleep, where do we go? And we're in bed, and so, anyway, whatever it's called, I'll put it up here. Um, I don't really listen to um, recent music, not because it's not good. It's just that um, I don't know it. Like going up to maybe 2000, maybe 2010, but closer to 2000. I know a lot about music from, let's say, 2000 going back. But at the turn of the millennium, maybe a little bit after it, maybe 2005, 2006, somewhere around there. Going backwards, I know a lot about music. Going forward from there, I don't know much about music. I'm not, I'm not, you know, uh, as you get older, uh, the newer stuff kind of you lose interest in it. But every once in a while, something peers through the clouds, right, and touches you, and that's Billie Eilish for me. She became big enough, I guess, that she broke through the minutia and got my attention. So I got myself a new, well, I bought it used, but I got sick of. I used to listen to music on Spotify or on um, uh, on YouTube, right? But the problem with YouTube is most of the times when you want to listen to an album, what happens is a person puts all the individual songs together in a form, but they're all individual videos, right? And so then you play all the videos, but what happens a lot of the time is after each video you have a break, and sometimes if the song is really long, you'll have a break in the song itself to have a commercial, right? And if you're not by by your TV or have the remote in your hand, it may play for 5 or 10 seconds, and then you can skip it by pressing the button with your to skip the commercial, and then it'll go back to the music again. But if you're doing stuff and you're listening to the music, then you have to break in what you're doing and then go to the TV and or listen to the whole commercial. And usually it's not one. Half the time, if you don't, you know, um, stop it, it'll go into another commercial, and sometimes three commercials, right? Um, So you have to be there with your remote control or with your mouse to click it to get rid of the advertising in order to continue with the music. And I don't know about you, but when you listen to an album, I know a lot of younger people now don't listen to albums anymore. They basically we've gone back to the mixtape, but you do it with your phone or whatever, right? Or mostly on your phone, right? So um, you have the mixtape on your phone, basically all your favorite songs, and then you just press play and you go through like 100 or 200 or 500 or 1,000 of all the different songs that you like. They don't listen to albums as much anymore. But me, I like to listen to an album. I like listening to one artist for more than 3 minutes. I like to listen to maybe 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes of one artist, right? Or one group. And so you listen to a whole album, but YouTube interrupts that with commercials all the time unless you buy their premium package, which I never will. Um, and Spotify used to be able to put up the whole album on Spotify, and then every two or three songs they may come in with a commercial, but it's between the songs. It's not during the songs, um, and it's usually about how you can you know get rid of all the commercials by paying a monthly fee or whatever, that kind of thing, right? Um, but those interruptions are kind of irritating as well, especially if you're listening to a mood album, right? If you're listening to a mood album where you're listening to it to put yourself in a certain mood, and then a commercial happens, it just kills that mood, right? So I kind of got sick of it after a while. I either had to decide to pay Spotify or YouTube um, a subscription every month, all right, or I got to find an alternative. Also, they don't. Spotify doesn't let, at least me. I don't know about you, but they don't let you listen to whole albums anymore. It's like, let's say I put this album on Spotify. All right, what it'll do is it'll play the first two or maybe three songs, and then it goes into a mix of all these other artists, that have similar styles of music as this music, right? And sometimes they'll only put one, and they'll go back to Billie Eilish and play another Billie Eilish song. But sometimes they just go on a tangent and just play all this random music, uh, and you can't listen to the whole album. Now, I'm assuming you can if you pay, which might be the point, because when I first listened to Spotify, you could play the whole album, but that's changed for some reason. Now you can't listen to the whole album unless you have your thing right with you and you're pressing buttons to get back to the next song or whatever, right? And so it disturbs what you're doing, right? Um, so I got sick of it. So what I did was, I mean, I listened to CDs in my car. So that's, and I go, I really enjoy listening to CDs because there's no interruptions. I can listen to one artist for, a good 30 minutes or so. I'm not like bouncing around to different artists all the time, right? Um, and I can listen to whole albums because it's all on the CD, right? So I ended up buying, a mini CD like stereo system for the living room, and then I bought another bigger one for down here in the basement. And so now I don't have to listen to Spotify or YouTube anymore to listen to music. I can, I have like 10,000 CDs, and I'm not listening to them because I've transferred them onto flash drives and listen to it that way. But what happens with that is um, it's so much, it all the music kind of gets lost, and you know the way the program transfer that into an MP3 file. Well, if you have one artist that did that song, that's cool. But if you have two artists that did it, let's say there's a guest spot of that song ends up going into a different folder automatically, right? So when you listen to, a flash drive of the songs, you may have, let's say there's 12 songs on it. You listen to one, two, three, four, and then five is like a two-person thing, so it's not there. So you listen to six, seven, eight, and you go, hey, where was that song that was at five? It's no longer there. It's in its individual folder, and you end up listening to it like 200 songs later or something, right? So, um, so it's kind of irritating. So I started listening back to CDs in my car. So now I got a CD player here for the basement and a CD player in the living room. Now I just listen to my CDs, so it's cool. I have so many of the great CDs I have attached to the wall, and I just walk up to the wall and I open up the CD case, pull out the disc, close the CD case, and put it in and listen to it. Right, so it's quite interesting. But it's I can listen to a whole album now. Anyways, I'm digressing. This everybody knows this album, right? So me being old, right? Uh, it came across. I can't remember where I heard her song, one of her songs, and I got blown away by it. So then I picked up this one, and I picked up the Black album, the one where when we go to sleep, where do we go, or whatever it's called. Picked up both of those. The other one's upstairs, and I'm listening to them now in full with no commercials and no breaks. All right, so it's cool. All right, so that's the only CD I have here. Let's do some more movies. All right, so I got this as a present. And do you know what it is? If you didn't have that black thing that went across there, right? So this is the steelbook, six movies of the Transformers franchise. So it has all five Transformer films plus Bumblebee, all in steelbooks. All right, all in this really nice 4K package. All right, and I got this as a gift. Now, I don't know about you, but when I have a steelbook, I like to place it on the shelf, right? And see the steelbook, right? Well, for some reason, look at this. All right. So here's the front and here's the back, but sorry, yeah, here's the spine, the front spine, and here's the back spine. Do you see any transformers on it? Right? It's blank. There's nothing there. There's nothing on the front. There's like the write up stuff in the back with all the different films on the back, but that's on the J card. All right. There's nothing on it. So I'm going to put this on my shelf like this, and this is what I'm going to see on the shelf. But I bought them because they're steelbooks. So I don't know. Maybe if I open it, maybe you can, maybe it slides off like this, and then you see the steelbooks, and then you can take this part, turn it around, and slide it in, and then you have the steelbooks here. I don't know. I'll have to see when I open it. But basically, this is all six of Michael Bay's or the Transformer films. Did Michael Bay do Bumblebee? I'm not sure, but I know he did all the Transformers films, right? Um, so it's all five of the Transformer films plus Bumblebee, all in 4K. I haven't watched it yet, so I'm going to watch it. I'm not a huge fan of Michael Bay. I'm not a huge fan of the Transformers um, because he kind of wrecked it with the such close-ups to a lot of the fights that you can't tell who's fighting who and what's going on. It's just too up close, right? All right. So what's up next? Okay. Then we have Gamera, the Heisei years. All right. So this is part of a two-issue box set from Arrow, and I got one of them as a like. What I did was I gave my family like a list of stuff that I would like for my birthday or Christmas or whatever, and they're they kind of buy it. Father's Day I'll get one, whatever, that kind of thing, right? So I got this one, but I didn't get the other one. All right, and I'll show it here. All right, so that's the other one. So it's actually a two-volume set, right? And these are all the, what would you call them? The competition to Godzilla. Godzilla was huge in Japan. All the Godzilla films that came out. Well, these are kind of like, the big monster films that weren't Godzilla at the time, right? So we have The Brave, Revenge of Iris, Attack of Legion, and The Guardian of the Universe. All right. And this one it's in its plastic, right? But wherever they got it, it was either ripped in transit or it was ripped originally, right? So, anyways, I haven't watched any of the films yet, but I thought I'd show it to you. All right, so that's that. And same thing, I keep asking for different box sets. So here's the Halloween 4K collection. All right, from 1995 to 2002. Basically, these are the reboots of it, right? Are they all on 4K HD, right? So you got Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, H2O, Halloween, and Halloween Resurrection. So I think this was like a part of this is from Scream Factory. It's part of a 2 or 3 box set where you get the earlier films and then you get. I think this is the last of those, right before the reboot on 4K. All right, so I'll need to get the other box sets as well. And I got this, which is the DVDs of the complete series of Battlestar Galactica. This, in my opinion, is the best sci-fi TV show that's come out in the last 30 years, maybe, right? So this came out in the early 2000s, and it's extremely good, mostly filmed in Canada, in Vancouver, and most of the actors are basically Canadian as well. And an extremely good uh, reimagining of the original Battlestar Galactica, right? And the creators did something that's extremely cool, and I highly recommend it that everybody does it. And that's basically they had a vision of what they wanted to do with Battlestar Galactica. They knew pretty much how many episodes it'll take to do that vision. They already had the beginning and they already had the end even before they started the series. And then they just did it, right? They filmed it. It wasn't like, so many in my generation when you were growing up, so many of the TV shows that you watch would depend on their popularity, whether you would get another season, right? So, but basically, it was a wing it kind of thing, right? You know what I mean? Like they'd come out with season one, season two, maybe they had a 2 or 3 season idea of it, and then if it was so popular, then they'd come out with another season, right? And then they'd add to the story, but they didn't have the story. It was from beginning to end. They just kind of improvised as they went along. They remembered the episodes before, and kind of as you go along, you get kind of pigeonholed because you can't do this or that because of the previous ones. So what happens is that over time, there's hardly anything you can do. But if you have an imagining of what the whole series is going to be like from beginning to end, then you just do it, right? It's a great way, and it's basically what is it? It's basically a however many hours of episodes movie, right? It's basically a huge movie. Whereas in before, the difference between TV and movies were like night and day. Um, a lot of the TVs were just one-offs, basically an episode, and then the next episode, even the earliest ones, didn't relate anything to the first episode. So you could join into a TV series at season 6 or something, and you wouldn't need to really know much about season 5, 4, 3, or 2, 1 because they're kind of encapsulated individual episodes, right? So, but then they figured out that if you make it more like a serial, like a soap opera did during the day, that more people would watch it, and that's they started to do that. So then you were dependent, and with the internet and DVDs where you can come out with seasons, um, you could binge watch it, and it wouldn't be like you had to be at home Thursday at nine o'clock to watch the show, otherwise you're going to miss it, and you won't be able to see it. And the next episode you watch is going to be lost because you didn't see the one before. That was always a dilemma when you were watching network television back in the day. You had to wait for the summer reruns if it was popular enough to get on reruns, right? Which it was because they only did what was it 6 or 7 months of and then the other 4 or 5 months would be reruns of the season, right? Um, but I mean, there were some TV shows that I watched that I would miss an episode or two, and then like 10 years later, it went into syndication. Then I finally got to see those episodes. Oh, okay. Now I understand what the hell was going on at Magnum with Magnum PI or something, right? So, anyway, so now you don't have to worry about it. You just go out and you know, buy the whole thing on DVD or Blu-ray and just watch the whole thing, right? So I got this one, Battlestar Galactica. All right. Um, and last but not least is all the Friday the 13th films on Blu-ray. This is also from Screen Factory. Now, it's my understanding that there are some issues with this, but overall, it's an extremely good series. So it's funny because out of all of these, my favorite um, film is When He Takes Manhattan. I really like that film for some reason. I like Jason Takes Manhattan. I like him wandering around the city. Out, he's not in a house or something, in a confined space, just waiting to kill people or whatever. He's like wandering the city, right? And I thought that was kind of cool, and I enjoyed it. So, um, yeah, Friday the 13th, the complete collection, deluxe edition. Um, and that's everything, I think. So, there'll be a close up so you can see all the different ones in the collection. All right. And that saves me from ever having to buy another Friday the 13th film, I guess, until 4Ks come out. But, you know, I'm starting to become of the opinion when it comes to 4Ks. You want to support the industry because it's shrinking. So when the studio puts out a 4K, you want to go buy it or whatever, right? Um, but I'm getting to the point where I don't know, maybe 4K should be reserved for like the serious action slash sci-fi films where you know all that, especially sci-fi, where or like a Pixar film or something like that, where the clarity really improves the film. Um, but for a drama, hell, I still watch stuff on DVD. Do I really need to see the Karate Kid in high definition 4K? You know what I mean? It's not good enough in Blu-ray or DVD. I don't know. You tell me, but I don't think so, anyways. All right, so that's everything that's accumulated on my desk in the last little while. Um, so I think look forward to a curating a series of curating videos as well uh, when I get the urge to do it, anyways. All right, so if you like the video, leave a thumbs up. Think about subscribing if you so choose. I would appreciate it. And you have a great day, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye for now.